Hey Rockstars! My name's Jon Messenger and welcome to the second Rockstar Author Chat. If you watched the first one, then you know that was all about the meet and greet, getting to know me as the author. And then for the second one, what we wanted to do today was to answer some of the questions from you, the fans. Before we get to the questions, I wanted to just update you on what all's going on with the books right now. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming up this year for my books. There's a standalone science fiction book that's in the works right now that should be done by the end of the year. There's custom covers. There's custom book trailers, and there's even an actual oil painting being done about my books. So a lot of exciting stuff that I can't wait to update you on by the end of the year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the questions. The first question comes from Shannon, and she asked me, how do you catch a unicorn? Because I promised that I would answer every question, I'm going to answer even the crazy absurd ones. So to understand how to catch a unicorn, you have to understand the unicorns. So, unicorns fart rainbows. That's actually a science fact. In fact, you might be a little disturbed as to how many images I found about that when I googled unicorns fart rainbows. I recommend trying it when you get a chance. So you need to keep that in mind as we move on to the next piece of evidence. If you've ever seen Horton Hears a Who, then you'll know that the eloquent Katie put it best when she said, "In my world, everyone eats rainbows and poops butterflies." By working in reverse, since unicorns fart rainbows, that means they must eat butterflies. So therefore, in order to catch a unicorn, you have to use pretty unique butterflies, because unicorns are monsters. Our second question comes from Katie, and she asks, oatmeal raisin or chocolate chip cookies? And the answer is obviously chocolate chip cookies. Don't be absurd. Let's go ahead and go to the next question. Katie went on to ask another question, which was, how do you hide a body? And if you have ever watched the movie Snatch or seen the second season of Hannibal, then you already know the answer to this question. Pigs. Buy a pig farm. Though, to be perfectly honest, that in itself is a little suspicious. The next question comes from Jude. Now, she's already had the pleasure of reading The Blood Thief of Witten Hall, which is book 2 in the Magic of Machinery series. And in there, we very briefly mention and describe a platypire. And if you're not familiar with a platypire, it's basically a platypus vampire, which is terrifying. But as she brings up in her question, we only very briefly mentioned it, and she wanted to know if it was actually going to come up again in the series. To be perfectly honest, I can neither confirm nor deny if it is, but I will admit that I have a bad tendency of catering to my fans. The fact that the platypire is in there at all is a direct result of one of the fans asking me to include it in the series. In fact, when you get to book 3, there's even one of the fans listed by name who's killed in a very brutal fashion, all because she asked to be murdered in the books. So while I can't confirm that the platypire are going to show back up, given enough incentive, I might actually bring it back in regardless. The last question of the day comes from Mikey, and he wanted to know where I got the inspiration for the Magic of Machinery series. If you watch the first vlog, you know that the Magic of Machinery series is a kind of a mashup of a lot of different genres. Between steampunk and high fantasy and murder mystery and urban fantasy. It's just a big amalgamation. Normally when someone asks me where I get the inspiration for a story, it's kind of hard to pinpoint. Normally what happens is I get a small snippet of an idea either from reading a book or watching a show or just a crazy dream I have, and I'll jot it down, and over time I'll slowly develop that story. So trying to pinpoint exactly how I came up with that idea is kind of hard sometimes. The Magic of Machinery series is very different though. The Magic of Machinery series actually started off as a science fiction standalone book. It was going to be about this young teenager who lived in Los Angeles, or at least the ruins of Los Angeles, right after an alien invasion has basically destroyed the United States. So their weaponry has destroyed all the major cities, it's carved a huge swath right through the middle of the US, it's caused global flooding, and so Los Angeles is completely underwater. And so the main character starts off on the outskirts of LA, that's still on dry land, looking over at all the skyscrapers jutting out from the ocean. And he was going to, with nothing else to lose, basically go from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. to try to save the world. I enjoyed the idea, but like most writers, what I wound up doing was I started working on some world building for this story. And what I wound up thinking about was how would Canada and Mexico respond to the U.S. being completely bombarded and destroyed, and then being, of course, invaded by aliens. And what I realized is what probably would happen was that places like Canada would completely shut down its borders and guard the borders with the military. and then kind of go into an isolationist mentality, and probably even create some sort of special service soldiers, or detectives, that sort of thing, that would actually hunt down any allegations of aliens being within the Canadian borders. Well, I really like that idea, and I love the concept of how other countries would respond when our country is destroyed. And so I actually shifted the idea of the story, and I thought, what if I just write the entire series or the entire book based off the Canadian response and just allude to everything that happened in the US? Well, what I wound up get happening is I wound up getting very bogged down in the science fiction aspect of it, and I got inspired to change it to a steampunk series, which is what Magic and Machinery became. So instead of it being based in the planet Earth like we know it, I created my own world. I took Canada and created its own kingdom, its own continent up in the north. And then the rest of it, though, the part about the country being cut nearly in two, that's the rift that wound up coming out of the Magic Machinery series. And everything that I wound up coming up with for the first story, which was this kid in Los Angeles going to DC, is actually going to be the story arc 2 for the Magic Machinery series. So I'm really excited about that. But obviously it has a lot of twists and turns from what it originally was. So my big inspiration for the ends of all these vlogs, because we are basically at the end now, is to finish with some sort of story. If I wasn't a storyteller, I wouldn't be here right now anyway. And so even though I now write books, I started off very much a verbal storyteller, and I still absolutely love it. So last time we talked about the Tough Mudders and about my brother's wonderful experience convincing a bunch of Americans that he was actually from Scotland, despite the fact he was born in DC. This time around, I wanted to talk about the trip I just took. So I just got back from a week-long trip in Germany and the Czech Republic. Had an amazing time hanging out with friends and visiting Nuremberg and Prague. Great trip. If you get a chance to go over there, I absolutely recommend it. Well, the very last night that we were there, we had just stayed at a really, really crappy hotel the night before. We booked it online based off the price, not necessarily knowing Nuremberg as well as we should have, and it wound up being a hotel that was literally sandwiched between a whole lot of strip clubs. Well, it doesn't matter what country you're in, strip clubs at 2 or 3 in the morning, especially the streets outside of them, are very, very loud. And so it was a miserable experience. We didn't sleep much that night because there was a lot of catcalling and a lot of other horrible noises going on at this time. So for the last night that we were going to be in Germany before I flew out and my friends had to go back home, we decided we were going to stay somewhere else. And so we'd actually, one of our friends had a German friend, and she let us stay at her apartment. So for dinner that night, we left it in her hands. She was from Nuremberg, and we said, go ahead and pick a restaurant, take us anywhere you want to go. And she chose a Mexican place, which I thought was very ironic that I flew from the US to Germany to go to a Mexican restaurant. But she insisted and said that this was the most authentic Mexican place in Germany, or Nuremberg at least. And so we were sold on the idea. We had just run a Tough Mudder that morning, and so we were tired and hungry. We really just wanted to eat something good at that point. And so we go to this restaurant and we sit down, and one of the appetizers, because it's not like in the US, you get baskets of chips and salsa as basically an appetizer for free. It doesn't happen that way overseas. And so we actually ordered the tortilla chips. And what we were expecting was tortilla chips like we understand in the States or even in Mexico with some salsa. And then our other friend ordered a queso dip. Now, being an American, having gone to Mexico, having lived in Southern California, I have an idea of what chips, salsa, and queso look like. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Keep in mind, this is the most authentic Mexican place in Nuremberg. So the chips come out, and there's 2 different options. There's one that has a nice nacho flavor, and the other one has a nice Cool Ranch flavor. So tortilla chips in Nuremberg are apparently Doritos. The salsa was okay, and then the queso came out, and it was all just clumps of goat cheese. It was the most bizarre beginning to a meal, and it really didn't get any better from there. We wound up finishing the night getting a free couple shots from the place, but they were chili tequila. So the tequila was fine, but apparently in Germany, if you are drinking a brown tequila, you don't take salt and lime with it. You take cinnamon and oranges. So we did the same way you would for a regular tequila. You put cinnamon on your hand, you lick it off, you take your shot, and then you take a bite out of this orange, which was just really bizarre, not just because of the flavors, but it was a chili tequila. So the tequila went down fine, and then our entire mouths were just set on fire by the amount of chili in this drink. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance to go to Germany, to Czech Republic, take the chance to go to a Mexican restaurant, because it is going to be a very unique experience you're never going to get anywhere else. All right, rock stars. Well, that's it for me. I really enjoyed this second vlog, and I really look forward to doing another one for you guys. If you have any ideas of what you'd like to see in the next one, go ahead and post them below. Also, if you guys have any questions, I really enjoyed answering your questions, even the asinine ones. So if you guys have any more questions, post those below as well. I'll go ahead and look through them, and next vlog we'll go ahead and answer some of those as well. All right, take care, rockstars.